Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of That GD Show. Hey, Genevieve.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
You are the G part of That GD Show.
Yes, it stands for nothing else.
Nothing else. I'm good. We've got...
Quick on the buzzer, Greg Markowski.
Oh, my God. He's so fast.
Uh,
Right out of the gate, Greg Markowski showing us the love. Super Chat 1999. Thanks, Dave and Genevieve. Received my mug this weekend, and I love it. We will talk about that special mug in just a moment. Most of you know who that is. If you're a new viewer, you've got a special treat coming up. But we just drove in about an hour ago from the Better Conference. And we like to live on the edge. Bevan says you drive me crazy, Dave. But we do have a lot going on. The conference was great. Super excited. Got to meet a bunch of new people, new friends, catch up with some old friends. Sorry you couldn't make it, Genevieve. I know you're gonna make one of these.
One of these eventually.
Yeah, and these conferences are really great. I really encourage you, if you can get to one that's close to you. The next one coming up that I'm going to be at is NanoCon in Nashville, July 30th. If you live anywhere close to that, please get there. It's not just listening to the speakers, although we're all great. It's the connection with people. It's the community. It's the hanging out before and after. It's the chit chat. Just so special. I really enjoyed meeting Shannon Q and Paula Gia. They came all the way from Nova Scotia.
I'm so jealous.
And we just had the best time getting to know each other. You feel like you know these people when you've hung out with them online and shows like this. But man, just getting to hang out in person and around a drink and just, it was just special. There's just nothing that replaces it. You know what it's like, Genevieve. We've had that time together.
Yeah, we have. And that's the closest that I've come to actually making it to one of these conferences. But it similarly... Beach Week and these conferences, it's funny. I talk to a lot of people about what I do, and sometimes they'll even ask what's an agnostic atheist? I thought those were two different things. But then when I mention that we have conferences and meetings, they're like, why do you have that? It really is. It's the same reason. Why do you have church? Why do you love church? It's your community, and having that community, being surrounded by like-minded people who understand you. That's so invaluable. Which is why I'm so excited about what we're going to talk about tonight. But
yes.
I will also say I'm even more jealous because I know that Paul jumped in on our last live stream last week at the very end, and I was just trying to keep my face cool and not get all starstruck. But I absolutely love him. So.
He's really great. It was really great getting to see him, and I made some great connections with people. We've got some of them are going to be guests coming up on this show, including next month, the one and only Shannon Q. And then we're going to get Paula Gia scheduled soon, and then some other people I talked to at the conference. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. I just saw Kim Possible. We missed her super chat. Her Antichrist super chat of 666 every week. Thank you so much, Kim. Speaking of NanoCon, I know for sure that Kim is going to be there with her husband. So we'll get to see them again, and looking forward to that. High five for heathen support. Thank you. Oh, Alec, there's another 666. Last week we had 3 of them, I think. The unholy trinity of 666.
I love it.
Genevieve, we normally have a call-in show. What's
I
that
know.
number in case the call? Right now, the call-in studio is not working, but Ethan is working diligently on that. So, what is that number, Genevieve?
So if we get it up tonight, and if you just want to know, so you can call us every week, the number is 217-375-9933. Like Dave said, we are having some troubles with call-in studio. So in the meantime, if you have any questions, which I absolutely hope that you do, what with who we have on tonight, then put them in the chat and we will do our best to respond right there.
Yes, please do that. Yeah, hopefully we'll get the call-in studio up and running. That's one of the difficulties with a live show is that stuff happens. We do the best we can with it, but if you've got questions or comments for our guest or for us, please throw them in the chat and we'll try to grab them because you're going to want to talk to our special guest. I'm building it up. I'm not going to bring her on just yet. But okay, back to the mug. I think we talked about that. So each week we have a trivia contest from my book, Childish Things, my memoir, and we pull details out of their trivia questions out of the book. Couple of disclaimers: if you've already won the mug, it's a GD show mug that you win. If you're the first one to get the trivia answer correct, you put it in the chat, and then you get to win the mug, and we'll send it to you the next week. If you've already won one, you're no longer qualified to win it. We want other people to win it. And if sadly, if you live out of the continental U.S., they don't ship. The merch store doesn't ship to a lot of the places, other countries, and it's just too expensive for us to ship them. I'm sorry. This is a shoestring budget show, but maybe we can do something else for you if you win the contest. So keep playing. So the question this week, we're digging deep. I feel like they've kind of been too easy, so we're going to dig a little deeper this week. You don't think so, Genevieve?
No. I've had to break out my book for every single one except
That's the
for
goal.
maybe one. I know, yeah.
And if you don't have a book, people, get a book. So you can buy that book, Childish Things, on Amazon. If you want a signed copy, a lot of people ask for that. In fact, I signed quite a few at the conference. That was always a thrill. But if you want a signed copy, please reach out to us via our website, daveoutloud.org, email daveoutloud@gmail.com, and we'll work out the details for that. Love to do that for you. Happy to do that. So the question this week, when I was still very much a super Christian and deeply in love with Jesus and filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, I once fasted. Yes, I did, for 21 days straight, because fasting in that culture was to get closer to God and to put your flesh down, deny your flesh, and hear the Lord better. So after the end of that fast, it was a special day. There was a conference in a football stadium, and we did a prayer walk to it. And it was right at the end. I fasted those days leading up to that. There's something special about that day for two reasons. It's a special day. I'm talking about the date. And then why, what also was it special? So it's kind of a two-part question. So you'll have to kind of dig a little deep and look into the nuances of that. But let me just see if I think. Okay, there's still no call in, I don't think. But if you get the answer to that question, I see a super chat here. DYDY 1965, $20. Thank you. I don't know what the DYDY is. I guess that's your. That's not a message. That's just your name. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support. And Anton Gomez, always regular Mexican, $30. Question: is Paula Gia taller in person? No, he's not. He's shorter than me, so that's a win for me.
We love
no.
a short king.
We do. We love a short king. No, he's not. He's not a tall fellow, but he's super nice and a lot of fun and funny as hell. I really enjoyed getting to know him. So totally good guy. So if you get the answer to that question, the day that we did the prayer walk down to the stadium, a special day, and why was it special in another way? Okay. All right. I think we are ready. Without further ado,
I will say quickly, you did forget one part of housekeeping. I'll keep it really brief.
oh, thank
Like,
you.
subscribe, please
Oh,
support Dave on Patreon. This show is not free, and Dave deserves all of your bucks and all of your support. So I think now we're good.
thank you. I'm really, really bad about that. I'm sorry.
I don't know what the liking and subscribing does. I do know what the Patreon does. But if you could do all the above, that'd be great.
Yes, thank you for that, Genevieve. Yes, it's very much appreciated. I mean, like this trip to the conference, that's always we lose money. It costs money to go to these things. It's very expensive, but we do them for the reasons that I stated before. So if you can support the channel and what we do with Dying Out Loud, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for reminding me. Genevieve Bevan would have gotten all over me for forgetting that. So I'm excited to have our guest tonight. Speaking of NanoCon, she will also be speaking there coming up into the month. So again, another reason to get your ass to Nashville at the end of July and enjoy this great conference and hang out with us and our special guest, Mandisa Thomas. Come on in, Mandisa. We've been looking forward so much to having you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Oh my God, we're
It's
so
good
glad
to
to
see
have
you
you.
again.
I know. Well, how long's it been? Where did we see each other last?
In April at the American Atheist Convention.
American Atheist Conference. We had tables not too far from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And you gave a great talk there. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Because you seem to stir some shit there, girl.
Yeah, it's a part of what I do, but
well, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us. We had you scheduled prior, and I had an emergency that we couldn't get you on. Thank you for your patience and understanding. And here's Greg Markowski back showing some love. Here's a little extra in honor of Mandisa.
Yay!
I'll bring that to you in Nashville and buy you a drink with that super chat. That's earmarked for Mandisa. So Mandisa, you are everywhere. You are every time I turn around, there's Mandisa Thomas doing some more stuff, and you're just the hardest working person out there, I think. Don't you agree, Genevieve? I mean,
girl, you are kicking ass and taking names. I'm just very excited that you took the time to talk to us. It's really
absolutely
great.
I think it's a part of what I do. It's a reason why why this work continues to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pleasure for me to be here. I appreciate the invitation, and I really respect you, Dave, and the work that you're doing, especially around your condition and the awareness that you're bringing. And it's really, really appreciated.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot. Really does. Speaking of the work you do, I think everyone that knows who Mandisa Thomas is knows that you founded and run Black Nonbelievers. There's a super chat there, Sam RC. Thank you for this conversation. Hello, Dave, Genevieve, and Mandisa. Big love from Oregon. Thank you. And by the way, folks, again, we remind you the call-in studio still isn't working. If you've got a question for Mandisa or just anything you would like to say to her, throw it in the super chats and we'll make sure we get that out and talk about that topic, whatever's on your mind. But give us a little background if somebody doesn't know who you are. I mean, my God, if they don't know, they're the rare person. What's your story? Where did you come from? How were you raised? Why did you start Black Nonbelievers? What's the motivation there?
How much time do we have? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. As I was saying that, I thought, oh my God, I've just opened up.
No, I will make it brief.
Okay.
So for those of you who don't know who I am Mandisa Thomas. I am a native of New York City, but I have been a Georgia resident now for over 25 years. And I'm the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers Incorporated, which is headquartered here in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And a bit about my story. I wasn't formally raised religious. I have a very, very rare upbringing, or a very, I wouldn't say totally rare experience, but I found myself on the lucky end of having two parents that were at a transitional phase
Hmm.
as far as religion was concerned. So my brothers and I were not formally raised religious. We were raised in the Black conscious community where we learned a lot about Black history and culture growing up. And I consider myself a
Excuse
super nerd. I read a lot as a kid.
me.
And, I was involved with a number of extracurricular activities as when I was growing up. And one of the things that always stood out for me was Christianity in particular. I um, I'm a classically trained singer, so I've been singing since I was 4 years old.
Did not know that.
And how could you? We did the fall excursion
I
last
know,
year,
but
Dave,
I didn't
and
know
we did a
this about
karaoke
you.
session.
I
But yeah,
know.
but I probably didn't say that.
You didn't.
I remember singing in various churches and kind of getting a peripheral view of Christianity in particular, and realizing that there were a lot of things in it that just didn't make sense and that were also kind of creepy. And also being able to compare and contrast various religions and God concepts growing up, I would just really, really, really start to think to myself, well, and some of the learning early on as well about Christianity in particular and how it was imposed upon the enslaved in this country,
Yeah.
the enslaved Africans and their descendants, really, really made me pause about that religion in particular. But over the years growing up, I identify as spiritual but not religious, and so on and so forth. It didn't really play that big of a role in my life until the move to Georgia. And it didn't even really play a big role then. However, I quickly saw how prevalent going to church was,
Mm-hmm.
especially here in the Atlanta area, in the South per se. I remember being asked what church I go to as just a very, very common question. I know that that is very common in a lot of southern states and rural areas. But as a Black woman, it was just assumed that I went to church.
Right.
Not if I went to church, but what church did I go to? And so that became a very, very tiring question. And over the years, as I examined and I had the opportunity to connect with others who shared similar perspectives about religion in particular, particularly Christianity, and how hypocritical it is. I had the chance to meet Jeremiah Kamara in the early 2000s, and I managed to connect with other atheists online. And so I wanted to start connecting with others in person. And when I did that, I quickly noticed the lack of diversity
Mm-hmm.
within many groups. And I went in with an open mind. I was ready to just meet fellow atheists and non believers. However, at my first meetup, I quickly encountered what I was warned about by one of my friends, my Facebook friends, in that there was a disconnect with how what Black folks and other people of color endure and experience, not just within our own communities, but also within secular groups,
Mm-hmm.
and how we tend to be quickly tokenized or ignored, or there is a level of discomfort that comes along with, oh, we have our only Black person. It's either you inundate us with all these questions or all these stereotypical views, and it's like, well, shit. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
sorry, I don't know if you can curse on the show, but
Oh yeah.
Oh,
good,
heck
good.
yeah, please.
We
Go for
dropped
it.
the F-bomb liberally.
Awesome. So myself and the only other Black guy that was there, and he was gay. This
Uh-huh.
was in January 2011. I said to him, look, there has to be more of us out here. We cannot be in this. There has to be more of us in this huge city that is predominantly Black. There has to be more of us questioning. Maybe they're just sitting in churches. They don't know that there is an option. Maybe they're just not seeing enough Black folks who look, who can identify.
Right.
And there needs to be an organization that helps bring more of us out. And that's when Black Non-Believers of Atlanta was started. And the intention was to just get a group on the ground in the Atlanta area, connecting with folks, having meetings, having social events, connecting with the broader local secular community, as well as being able to connect with the national community. Because clearly there was an issue that needed to be addressed and resolved when it comes to bringing more people of color into the movement, bringing more women into the movement, as well as the issues that we directly face as a result of that. And so as time went on and as we continued to develop this organization, we shortened the name simply to Black Non-Believers because there was interest in starting affiliate groups in different cities.
Yeah.
And so the more I continued to engage, the more I found that I was meeting all these different people. I met Daryl Ray for the first time in 2011 at the first American Atheist Convention that I attended in Des Moines, Iowa in 2011. And it was just wonderful to be in that space with so many of us. And
Yeah.
and like you said about just the in-person camaraderie, the in-person connections. I mean, what we do online is great, but there's nothing like being around a bunch of us in person.
Absolutely.
And we wanted to continue on that. We wanted to actually improve on that. Because as someone who is very much immersed, I am unapologetically Black and I have no problems showing it. And so our organization really is made up, and we're not just made up of Black folks, for those who, for those who had a question about that, right? But that is our target demographic. We center our voices because even at the time, and even still now, there was still a scarcity of resources from Black atheist content creators, writers, even though it is there, but there definitely needed to be improvement on that. And that is what, as an organization, we sought out to do. So we had in building that community and in increasing that representation, we have been successfully able to amplify more of our voices, bring out more people into the forefront. And I'm very, very proud of the work that we have done over the years.
Well, you definitely have set the bar pretty high. You're a trendsetter in that arena, and I guess the bottom line is it allows Black people who are Black who don't have faith to feel like they've got a place to land, that there's somewhere that they can. Because as you found coming into that space, it was daunting. It was like you didn't feel you had a welcome mat there, and so you have created that, and that's huge.
Now,
Yeah.
I will say that we weren't the only organization, that we weren't the only Black organization in existence at the time. There was, I have to give a shout out to Black Atheists of America, as well as Black Skeptics Los Angeles. You also had African Americans for Humanism, which was a program of the Center for Inquiry at the time. So there were other entities, which was the reason why we started Black Non-Believers only locally to Atlanta, because we were just really trying to build up that network there. However, as time has shown, as well as the way that, with our style of doing things, and it certainly wasn't to intrude or trample over any other organization. In fact, we worked very much alongside with other organizations. But clearly the way we did things and the way we wanted to reach people really resonated with not just our members but with the community as a whole. And that I'm very, very proud of that as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well, I know you've got a chapter here in Charlotte because I've met Tina, and
Yes.
she runs the one here. She's a firebrand. I love her. Where else do you have chapters? Just so
So
people watching, if you don't know it's there, I mean, where do you have chapters live right now?
absolutely. So we have affiliate groups in my hometown of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
We also have them in Washington, D.C., like you said, Charlotte, North Carolina. We are also in Detroit, Michigan, and Portland, Oregon, as well as Louisville, Kentucky. The organizers there are starting to get back running that affiliate group. So yeah, that's where
That's
we
good.
have we have a few in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
So for anyone who is looking to connect with us in any of our cities, and you can connect with you can connect with more than one affiliate. We certainly encourage you to do so.
Now, if there's someone out there listening to this, or we run into somewhere that would want to start a chapter in their city, how do you go about that?
Well, they can contact us directly through our website. Now we are in the process of revising
Okay.
our affiliate guidelines because, like most organizations that have volunteer organizers, this is
Yeah.
still technically a volunteer position for me. Um, we have people
There
who
ain't no
come and
money in
go.
this game, is there?
No, I mean, if you're doing it to try to get rich, you're in the
Oh, you in
wrong
the
place.
wrong business.
But the thing is that we truly do care about people, and I think
Yes,
that
I
that
know
is
you
worth
do.
supporting. That is absolutely worth supporting the work that we do. But they can certainly contact us, and if you are someone who is able to give the time, and you can, and it really doesn't take, I mean, it is a lot to organize.
Yeah.
People think that this is easy. Some of us make this look very, very easy when we talk about putting on, because and I will talk about the conferences that I produce
Uh-huh.
later on. People think these things are easy, and they really aren't. They take work. They take a lot of time and dedication.
Yeah.
So if you are someone who is willing to put in that time, and you are willing to work with us as a team, then yes, please do contact us on our website, and we can go over the affiliate, the guidelines and the expectations,
Mm-hmm.
as well as what we need from you as an organizer.
Cool. Well, I just know that there's probably everywhere I go, there's people. One thing we talked about a lot at the conference that I just came from is there are people in small towns, big towns, everywhere that don't know others are there, and
Mm-hmm.
they feel alone and isolated, and they're looking for community. They need community, but they just don't know how to find it. So a part of the work that I love doing is connecting people and helping Bob find Jim, who lives across town, and they didn't know they both were part of the same movement and just didn't have a way to connect. And I just love seeing that happen. And so any way that we can facilitate that for Black non-believers or any subgroup that is out there that is trying to find ways to connect with other people who are living in the same space, that's a huge win for me, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And what some people don't understand, and what it took me to understand, is that when you're coming out of religion, you really are. For many people, it's like coming out of a bubble. I certainly
Yeah.
did not escape indoctrination, even though I wasn't formally raised religious. But even just finding, even just having, just getting up the courage to find other people can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Of the
Absolutely.
non-believers. Some people may not think to look on Meetup or just
Right.
type in, atheist groups, or, it takes a while for
Mm-hmm.
people because of that fear that may have been ingrained into you, growing up. It can be a very, very, it can be very intimidating, but once you find it, oh my gosh, you might be inundated and overwhelmed, because I know I was overwhelmed
Right.
by the number of groups I saw that were, that existed for atheists, humanists, and other non-believers. I was like, wow. It's still considered a small community, but it's still pretty
Yeah.
large.
Yeah.
And what it shows is that you're never truly alone. There
Mm-hmm.
are always other people out there who you can connect with, who we can learn from, who we can rebuild with. That is a very, very important part to what we do, because once you leave your religious communities, you almost feel like things are falling apart. And that's why so many people are afraid to leave. But
Yeah.
once you take that step and find others and truly connect, it becomes a bit easier.
Yeah.
And you really find that sense of purpose and hope and determination. And I'm trying not to sound like an infomercial
I
for
know,
any of us,
but we
but
know it's true. We've seen it.
it absolutely.
We've been doing this long enough. And Genevieve comes from the same space you came from, Mandisa. She was never a Christian either. She grew up completely free thinking and secular, unlike me. So she's learned that this community is filled with people who are coming out of bubbles they've lived in and don't know how to find community.
Yeah, just like you,
Yes.
I moved to the South and got asked so many times, "What church do you go to?" And I didn't know that was a thing. It smacked me in the face, I will tell you that. But
I started to get irritated by it. I
I
am
bet
like,
you
what
did.
business is it of
well,
yours? And I remember being invited to Creflo Dollar's church. I was like,
Oh,
hell to the no.
Jesus.
Like, hell no, I'm not going to that church.
You could have been rich because everybody that goes to his church gets rich, don't they?
No,
Oh,
not
no, no,
quite.
just him. Never mind. Just him.
Yeah.
Sorry. That's how
pretty
that
par for the
works.
course.
Well, I wanted to ask you something that actually Cynthia McDonald talked about at the conference this past weekend. She gave a great talk, and you know Cynthia well.
Yes.
She's as fiery as you are. I love her. But she talked about the demographic, the small percentage of the Black population that is non-religious,
Mm-hmm.
and went into some startling statistics for that. So I wanted to ask you, as someone who's been in this space for so long, why do you think that is? What's yeah, I'm just going to leave it there. Why do you think so many Black people are religious? You alluded to it earlier that's just the common understanding that if you're Black, you're going to church somewhere. Why
So
is that?
so we have to talk about the institutional factors, right?
Right.
And this is also supported by Pew Research numbers. Even though there is an uptick in the non-religious demographic overall, I think it's close to 30%, and there's also a decline in church attendance.
Right.
There is still a very, very high proportion of the Black community that still attends church. And you also you have to consider the institution of slavery in this country, how religion and Christianity in particular was built into law, and also how when slavery ended and Reconstruction ended, Black churches really became a backbone for many communities, especially after Jim Crow laws were enacted
Mm-hmm.
that disfranchised Black communities. And so there was a huge support system in the Black church for years. And so it really was a driving force behind many, many communities and for many people. So that is really, really, and there's a documentary, I think it's a 2-part documentary that PBS produced called The Black Church recently. And it gives a history of it. I personally didn't watch it. But apparently it was very insightful for people who need to get a better understanding of what that meant, especially for for those who really didn't know. Of course, the challenge with that is the doctrine of Christianity. what was used to justify the enslavement of Black folks in this country. Now, of course, there are still a lot of white religious people. Certainly, you see that we're seeing the rise of white Christian nationalism,
Oh
white
boy.
evangelicalism, um, much of which is the root of racism and white supremacy in this country.
Right.
We got to talk about that.
We do.
However, because of the oppression and subjugation, as well as the support that the church itself and the people of the church itself provided, it really, really just it reinforced that sense of community for many Black folks. The church was where you got your community news. The church was where you really had the opportunity to you had a chance to rise to prominence, and also that's where a lot of where a lot of gospel music, a lot of good
Yeah.
music
Yeah.
originated. So there is a lot culturally that the Black church
Yeah.
has sort of contributed
I was going to
to.
say it's probably more of a cultural thing than almost any demographic that I could think of. I mean,
Mhm.
would you say that most of the people that come into your group in Atlanta, for instance, have come out of a religious background or
Most do,
culture?
yes. Most have.
Yeah.
Um,
So they're
yes.
leaving their tribe and they're leaving all that's safe for them and all that they've known. And it's a very, I'm sure, for all of us that came out of that, but I think for some subcultures or some groups, it's probably more difficult.
It is, and being Black is, religion and being Christian is so tied into our identities. Um, Dave, you may not remember, but a few years ago, back in 2015, more than a few years ago, I was accosted by a Black woman at a conference, at the Conference for Atheist Alliance of America in
Mhm.
2015. And it took place in Atlanta. There was also a Women of Color in Ministries conference that took place at the same time, as well as a multi-level marketing conference that was
Oh
sort of
boy,
religious in nature.
the
Yeah,
trifecta.
it was great. But actually, we ended up having some really, really great conversations with some of the other attendees
Uh-huh.
of those conferences. But this woman in particular, she personified the whole. She actually got in my face and was yelling at me, saying that she could not believe that as a Black woman, I had the nerve to identify as an atheist in front of these white devils, and she was going to bathe me and my kids in the blood of Jesus. I mean, it was terrible.
Wow.
She was absolutely
Like
horrendous.
stood up publicly and accosted you?
Well, yeah, she was at our table, and it started
Okay.
off with me trying to explain to her about, trying to tell about the organization, and she was just really obnoxious.
Mm-hmm.
And it was she just became really disrespectful very quickly when I called her
Mm-hmm.
on it. Why did I do that? So
Yeah.
and I actually had the opportunity in 2019 to speak with Bashir Muhammad, who is with Pew Research. And this was after one of the God Talk episode or series that was taped here in Atlanta, that is produced by the National Museum for African American Culture. And there are many Black folks who perceive atheism to be a white thing, that
Yeah. Yeah.
even though, again, we're talking about white Christian evangelicalism that has driven a lot of racism and white supremacy, atheism is seen as a thing that white people do. And part
Mm-hmm.
of that is due to the overwhelming presence of white people in the movement. So that's not to say that that was anything intentional, but also too, and as we talk about addressing white supremacy in the secular movement,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
of that could be deliberate because of the notions and perceptions of Black folks. But
Right.
it is so tied into the identity of being Black, that is almost hard for people to separate that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you come out as an atheist and you're Black, you're seen as rejecting Black culture. You're seen as rejecting the Black identity.
Right.
Of course, that could be the furthest thing from the truth. But because of the stigma that still exists, and also just the misinformation and the ignorance of our existence.
Mm-hmm.
There are just still a lot of people who just have never thought about the possibility that you could be Black and non-religious,
Yeah.
explicitly Black and atheist.
Yeah.
And part of that is because that is reinforced by the numbers. I mean, the numbers are still very high in our communities, and so that makes it a bit of a challenge as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, you touched on that. I wanted to get you the racism within our own secular community, our atheist, the white supremacy that I mean, we would assume, I think, wrongly, that when you leave religion and you embrace free thinking and open-mindedness, that you leave all your dogmas and your biases and your bigotry behind. But you've found that not to be the case. And
Absolutely.
your talk in Atlanta was really great. And give us a review or a snapshot. Here we go. You knew I'd bring this in.
Absolutely.
Give us a snapshot of what that was and just a little bit of the pushback you got. And then I want to hear why you think you got that pushback. What was it that triggered some of these people?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
So
sure.
for those of you, yeah, right, absolutely. Let's go through it. Let's get to it.
Let's do this thing.
Yes. So for those of you who weren't at the American Atheist Convention, or you did not have the opportunity to see the talk if you were there, my talk was titled "How to Address White Supremacy in the Secular Movement," or addressing white supremacy in the secular community and what we can do about it. So this was the result of 11 years of organizing in this community.
Mm-hmm.
Not just simply experiencing overt racism, but understanding the impact of that, not just as it pertains to white people, but as how it pertains to all of us, and how we may be upholding it in various ways without realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as with all of my talks, I usually give a definition of what I am discussing, and I give examples. And I will say that the talk was very well received.
Yes.
In person. The majority of the audience loved it. There were questions that were asked,
Mm-hmm.
but both American Atheists and the American Humanist Association, both organizations of which I serve on the boards.
Mm.
But American Atheist tweeted the slide where I showed 10 ways you might be upholding white supremacy as a non-believer. Might,
yes.
And the American Humanist Association actually tweeted another slide. But over the years, when secular organizations have addressed diversity, white supremacy, racism, one of the first questions that are asked is, well, what does this have to do with atheism? What does this have to do with humanism? It has everything to do with it. There are a lot of Robert Greene Ingersoll, who a lot of atheists love to quote, was an abolitionist. He was anti-slavery because it was anti-human rights. And if you don't have belief in the God and you want to see all humans treated equally, then that is, how can it not be any more plain?
How can that carry over? Yeah, how can that not carry over into that subject? Right.
Exactly. So addressing systemic racism, addressing systemic injustice is just as important as state church separation. In fact, they go together. But what was interesting was that because I was the one who said it as a Black woman. And, Twitter is a breeding ground for all the trolls and all of the people who love to say sarcastic shit and think they can get away with it.
Right.
So there were a couple of people from one organization in particular who was calling for American Atheists to apologize and rebuke me, and shame on them for platforming such such anti-white, anti-male sentiments. And Like, wow, that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And of course, the people who, you of course you had to have seen the entire speech in order to get but one of the points that I made were the all lives matter people. It's a way of holding white supremacy, and that pissed them off too. So
Yeah.
it was like, I a couple of the points that I made was just constant appeal to white and male authority, constant appeal to academia. And that's not to say that we don't value that.
Right.
But what it means is that you ignore another segment of the population when you are talking at people and not to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we as a community tend to pride ourselves on our intellectual capability and how intelligent we are, but certainly our social skills are extremely lacking,
Yeah.
and privilege does tend to show. So so there was the former president of American Atheist decided that he wanted to do a 2-part video
Well, he's shown
about
his
how
ass many
racist.
times,
Yeah,
right?
yes, he has. But he decided that he wanted to do two whole videos about how racist I was and how I need to stop going to white people and telling them that they're not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to these places and saying that. But the one point I made was that our community has actually gotten a lot better at this.
You did, right?
Yes. The thing is, though, we want to continue continue on this, not just be a trend, but to lead by example. Because remember, we're not the religious right. We don't ignore this stuff. So when people of color are being mistreated, when further marginalized demographics are being mistreated, and even by each other, it's important to address it and resolve it when we can.
Right.
Because to hold on to people who are continuing to foster this idea of, well, we should just stick to atheism and that's it. Well,
No.
it goes deeper than that. It always goes deeper than that. And so, but yeah, how dare I?
And what do you know about this,
Yeah.
Mandisa? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Right. I've only been organizing and speaking and working with organizations for 11 years now. What do I know about that?
we were at a gathering here in Charlotte a few months ago, and Tina was there, and we got to talking about this. It was a party, but we always talk about serious stuff. And so we got to talking about racism, and there was a dude there that did the not all whites, that old thing. Not all men. I'm not racist. I have a black friend. That's
Right.
I'm not homophobic. I have a gay friend.
Right.
That old thing. Oh my God, did Tina dress? She tore him apart, and he was backing up and spitting and sputtering, and she just wasn't having it. I was so proud of her. She
I
just
don't
said,
blame her. I
no,
mean, yeah, no.
But aren't you tired of that argument? Oh, not all. Why do you say all of us? We just don't understand our privilege, and until we can admit our privilege from the get-go, right out of the gate, we don't have a say in the conversation.
And the
That's
thing
how I
is,
feel.
well, there are quite a few white folks, and I actually I gave a shout out from the stage. If you remember that, if you were there.
Oh yeah.
But the thing is that, there are quite a few white folks in this movement who get it.
Yeah.
The problem is when those the few who are louder are allowed to continue to speak.
That's it. Yeah.
And those those folks who want to, who talk about peace and harmony, and we should fuck that. Like, you know what? If there are people who are causing harm in this movement, get rid of them.
Yeah, we have to deal with
check
it.
them.
You can't have peace and harmony until you deal with that stuff.
Exactly. And that's what we're saying.
Yeah.
When we talk about, I know that there are quite a few heroes in this movement, right? Who who were very helpful to us in our journey.
Mm-hmm.
We are still human beings. If they are treating people, if they are mistreating people, if they are saying awful things about trans folks, about Black folks, about women in this movement, they do need to be called out on that, and there should be consequences as a result.
Absolutely.
That's what we're saying here.
Right. That's all you're saying. Right.
But yeah, to do that,
Mm-mm.
we're being taken over by the woke people. It's like, I mean, it's just covert for, how dare this Black N-word say that? I mean, you might as well call it out. But of course they're not going to say that. But and they may also try to hang on to the one or two people of color who might disagree. And no one said no one said we agree on everything.
No.
I don't sit here speaking for all Black atheists.
No.
Or even all Black women atheists or all people of color. There are there are quite a few who disagree with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine, but we certainly, that doesn't, that doesn't negate the fact that we still deal with these challenges within our communities.
Genevieve, you were going to say something.
Oh gosh, at one point I've just sort of been reeling over here. I have so many thoughts. I feel like, particularly when it comes to that backlash of sharing that slide of, you might be propagating racism if you do all these things. I wish that people could understand that calling out racism isn't an insult that you need to immediately be defensive about.
Right.
It's often just we have to talk about the way in which we have our own internalized white supremacy, because it is built into the fabric of everything. And so often racism isn't an act of just pure hatred. It's often just ignorance.
Right.
And if you can just stop being so defensive of, oh, I'm not racist, how dare you even mention that? Like, it's frustrating that we can be so, as a community, we can be so honest about the genuine history behind Christianity, of the authorship of the Gospels and the Crusades and all of the anti-Semitism and all of the last 2,000 years. But when we want to talk about the last 400 years in this country, people just start balking. I think we do I mean, I feel like the atheist community at large is getting more diverse. We are having more voices and different races and nationalities and sexualities and gender identities, but it's still so frustrating how dominant. I think back to Dave. I think what was it last week that we got a comment from somebody on one of our videos about how great it was to see normal people and not these, transgendered people. It's genuinely disgusting.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was sort of thinking about was, something that I tried to combat myself in my space on my platform is getting rid of this idea that being a theist or being a Christian means that you're stupid. And the ways that I have seen, unintended racism really shine is when I speak to other atheists who think that believing in a God is dumb, but they think that if you're Black and you believe in God, because of the history of how Christianity was introduced to the Black community in America, then it's like they're extra insulting. It's like these white atheists that I talk to are basically calling all of these Black believers like race traitors, and it's just so frustrating that we can't take a step back
And
and recognize
they're not being any better, because you have to be able to understand the history of not just religion as it impacts Black communities, how religion impacts the world.
Yes.
And when it is ingrained, or when it is embedded, whether it's the laws, whether it is through public policy, whether it is through imagery, how that trickles down, and how that affects people subconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about, um, a group of people who were taught that, or who were, when you're talking about, a group of people whose skin color, you know, is supposed to make them inferior,
Right.
and how, again, through laws, through policies, that was reinforced
Mm-hmm.
over the course of centuries. People may not realize how, they may say they don't see color, but at the same time, it's like their privilege and their ignorance says otherwise,
Yeah.
or
Exactly.
dictates otherwise.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure we could go on for a long time, just dismantling or dissecting that. But it was really a call for people to rethink how they may be how we're addressing each other, the people who you hold near and dear, why you may hold them near and dear, and what may be preventing you from either seeing and doing things differently, and
Yeah.
that we should. That was really, really that was the main, the premise of my talk, which, again,
Well,
like
and
we said,
that's
was
what
well received by the
that
audience.
exactly, and that's
Yeah.
what most of us who are open-minded about these things saw in it. I mean, I'm not on the defensive about this. As a white cis male who was born in privilege, even I wasn't born with money, but I was fairly poor actually. But I realized that I'm in the dominant position in this country, and I'm always looking for opportunities to check myself, to check my privilege, whether it's with black or gay or trans or any marginalized group that did not have and does not have the background privilege that I was just simply born with. I'm always looking for ways to check, okay, how am I doing this? Am I hearing it right? Am I saying it right? I come in with the attitude, teach me, show me where I've got a blind spot here. Show me what I'm missing. Show me how I can improve the way I communicate about these things. If we don't have that attitude, then I think you need to ask yourself, why? Why not? What are you
Mm-hmm.
defensive about?
Right.
What are you closed off about? Why would you not say to someone like Mandisa Thomas, teach me what I don't know about the black community and how
Yeah.
you've suffered?
And I might push back just a little bit further on that, Dave. Just to say, I think that even better than saying that would be, what resources are already out there for me to go and look at
Exactly.
Correct.
myself, because we
Correct.
cannot
I
ask
have
others
no
to,
excuse for ignorance. You're right.
yeah.
You're right.
And some of those people who always say, well, can you teach me? This information has been shared previously.
Good.
Mhm.
Yes,
Some
good
of
point.
this information they've rejected. Some of it they claim it's fake news, like Donald Trump likes to say, or
Mm-hmm.
former President Trump likes to say.
Yeah.
And we are a community, like I said before, we pride ourselves on our intellectual capability and also dissecting the God concept. But when it comes to other concepts, or not just concepts, but other factors, there is just there's so much disingenuous. They're being so
Yes.
disingenuous and also
Right.
lazy.
And lazy.
Mhm.
You're right. So we've got a couple of comments and questions in the chat. By the way, to remind you folks, if you're just getting here, the chat line, the call line is not working tonight. Something with Google Call is not connecting. So if you've got questions or comments for Mandisa, please drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as soon as we can. There's one now. Genevieve, I'm having trouble reading that. What is
Yeah,
it?
that was a 1999 super chat from Asexual
Oh,
Atheist.
hey.
Damn, Dave, buy Mandisa lunch. Love your show. Great guests and great topics.
I guess you're getting lunch and a drink, Mandisa.
Yeah.
Hey,
Will
love it.
Judy. Will Judy, thank you so much. Another $20. I'm so
Well, I
excited to
love
hang out with you two at
Will.
NanoCon. Mandisa is the absolute best. I
Hey,
concur.
Will.
Thanks,
Love you,
Will.
Oh,
buddy.
it's so
Darren
good to see
Wright.
so many
I
familiar
love
faces
Will.
in the
Yeah.
Mhm.
chat.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Will's
Yes.
always here. I love seeing his name pop up, and also Darren, also a big supporter. Love
Regular.
seeing you every
Mm-hmm.
week. Much love to you, Mandisa, David, Genevieve. Thank you for continuing to give atheists a voice, peace, and love. Thank you. And another $5, Kelly Laughlin. Kelly, you're amazing.
Thank you,
It's always a
Kelly.
pleasure doing shows with you. And a question from Philip Grant, which I'm excited. Well, not excited. This is a very important thing that has occupied my entire mind for the last 4 days. I think I finally have enough emotional capacity to talk about it. But a question for you, Mandisa, if you have the emotional capacity to talk about this,
Sure.
what do you perceive would be the devastating impact of the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court on Black communities in the USA? How much time we got?
Yeah.
Oh boy, you're right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I, for one, was not surprised by the decision. I certainly am not surprised by who was the deciding factor, because as I said before, just as all Black atheists don't think alike, certainly not all Black folks think alike. And we have one person sitting on the Supreme Court who is the prime example of upholding white supremacy. If we needed an example of that, a non-white example of who upholds white supremacy, it would be Justice Clarence Thomas. And this is what one of the devastating impacts is. There is a sentiment among many in Black communities, and I don't care who gets mad at me for saying this on this platform. There's an overwhelming number of Black folks who would actually support this decision because they think abortion is genocide. They think birth control is genocide because of the institutional racism,
Right.
and also some of the medical malpractices that have been committed against Black communities. They would actually be in support of it. However, because infant mortality rates are higher, because Black women have a higher chance of dying in childbirth, and a lot of other health factors that can come along with pregnancy and reproductive health, access to adequate reproductive health is still a problem in Black communities. So overturning this decision also means the criminalization of Black children, particularly Black boys, as well as Black girls, because potentially the option of making that reproductive choice wasn't there, because these Republicans really don't care about life once these babies are born. They certainly don't care about the social services that may be needed because of people whose circumstances are beyond their control, do not have access to resources. So this could have a devastating effect on Black communities and other communities of color, Black women in particular. We already have to face such societal stigma, and this goes beyond this. Personally, I don't care whether you're a believer or not. Everyone should have access to reproductive care and contraception, and birth control options. But what this does is severely limit, again, the options that people have. And for those communities that are predominantly Black who don't have that access, it's going to, it may turn into, again, once the criminalization, or certainly it could lead to higher mortality rates. And so it's such a shame that that this decision was overturned. I know that the conservatives and Republicans have been threatening to do it for years.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, now we could go into, I don't like to point. I mean, it could be easy to point the finger at this given time, but what I would say is now that we see what's happening, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to, turn this around with our elected officials? People need to realize that voting on the local levels is just as important as in voting on a national level, and that who the president is determines who is a majority in the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
And so, even as boring as it may seem, when it comes to our civics lessons and civics classes, these things are important. So it is, yes, absolutely. I see a comment. Yes, Anita Hill. I remember being in elementary school. Actually, I might have been in junior high or middle school and high school, and her testifying against Clarence Thomas. And you should have seen the hate she got from
Yeah.
Black communities. Yeah. So it has been, it has just, this is going to be a nightmare for many people. And I think about my children who, and thinking about their, and thinking about their reproductive choices in the future. So this means we have to stay vigilant.
Yes. Yes. And I think we're seeing that we have a runaway Supreme Court, if you will. We have a very aggressive, I just saw today, even driving a news headline, I haven't gotten a chance to look into it, but they overturned a ruling against a coach, a Christian coach,
Yeah. Yeah.
who was fired because he wouldn't stop praying with his kids, with his players after football games at midfield, because the school did the right thing. I have no doubt that FFRF sent them a letter and said, you got to stop this.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't want to get sued. So they fired the guy, but he took it to the Supreme Court. And this court overturned it and said that, yeah, it's okay for him to exercise his religious convictions on a publicly paid for public high school football field.
Right.
That is going to open a floodgate that we just, I don't know when we're going to see the end of that, because
And
they've been at that gate for a while.
Yes.
yeah. And of course, Dave, this is also just days after the ruling about the schools in Maine, so that our tax dollars can now
Yep.
go to
Yes.
supporting religious
Yeah.
schools as well. It's, oh, you
So
know,
this court has a religious right agenda, and they don't care about the rule of law. I mean, I think that's clear now. They don't care what the law says. They're going to push through what at least these five want in terms of their religious convictions. They are the thing that a lot of people don't understand about conservative evangelicals. If you come from an evangelical tribe, and that is in your DNA, if you will, you feel compelled by the God that you serve to evangelize. That's the core of who they are. They feel it's their job to proselytize everyone around, everyone around them. And if they're not doing that, then they feel like they're not serving God properly.
Yes, and there's been such a privilege for so many years, and they're fighting back. They're fighting
Yeah.
to keep that power, because
Yeah.
now they're seeing more of us speak up. They are seeing more people, and they are really trying to get into power in their school boards, and really trying to make things a theocracy. And it's like, no, that's not. Yeah, that for historically, that should not have been the case. I mean, we know that quite a few of the founding fathers were also slaveholders, so we acknowledge the contradictions there,
Oh,
or
yeah.
the hypocrisies there. However, there is supposed to be strict separation of religion and government, and that just have such far-reaching consequences that so many people don't even realize. And it's like it's going to be really, really important
Well, yeah.
that not just pay attention, but continue to support the organizations that are doing that work in particular.
Well, I saw that Will Judy was here, and I know that Will, he's part of a group. I think he started the group. We were with Will in Houston a few weeks back and stayed with him. I had some good time with Will, but he's very much getting active in the political process. He's holding meetings for political candidates in the state and local level with atheists to let these candidates know that there's a bunch of atheists here and we vote. And we want to know where you stand on issues. We want to hear from you as a non-believer. And one of the soapboxes that I'm getting on, and I'm really getting Shannon Q told me after my talk at the conference this weekend that was an angry dad talk. and it kind of was, because I'm getting pissed off. And the point that I'm going to be talking more and more about is if we don't speak up, we're going to continue to be rolled over. The margin. I mean, let's just admit it that in this country, as an atheist, we're a marginalized group. Think of those students on that football field who don't want to pray with their coach. What are they going to do? Stand back in the sidelines and look like a sore thumb and stand out like that and get stared at and laughed at by the other students and picked on and ostracized? Of course they're going to join in even though they don't want to. The peer pressure is intense.
And I'll tell you, the young people, though, a lot of young people are really they're on it. I mean, there are a lot of older people that can learn from what young people are doing and student movements, because they are not swayed, first of all, by the fire and brimstone anymore.
Right.
A lot more of them are challenging this authority. And I will say that my sons are probably especially my youngest son, he's one of them. And part of that is because the thing is that as we have more access to information, as we have more access to and of course technology makes that possible, it's harder to just simply take something at one's word simply because. So I really applaud a lot of young people.
Yes.
Who, when they speak up, the adults need to listen.
Yeah.
And so hopefully what will happen is that those students continue to galvanize.
Yeah.
And continue to push back on that. So I am, even though things look bleak right now, I know that this is still a very hard decision. So but I think it's going to fuel a lot of us, and hopefully it will close that gap between, the generations, and that we are listening to each other and working together.
Yeah. What can you mention? Oh, there's Toy Ranch, $20. Thank you so much. And Cairo Wolf, my brother, $50. The fight continues. You guys are frontline warriors. I salute you. Continue in greatness. Thank you, Cairo. You mentioned getting involved on the local level politically and voting, school boards, running for school boards. Do it. What can be done? What are the answers here? Ladies,
oh my
help
gosh,
us.
It almost it almost feels like everything and nothing at the same time, right? So
I know, right?
People need to understand that the best time to get involved is when people aren't looking. I think too often we look for things to be in the headlines before we pay attention. And that is where their base during the Obama years, I think they really started to ramp up. They did it silently, they did it consistently. Many of us, we think that, the small tedious tasks are not going to make a difference, and they do. It means staying consistently involved and committed, and even when you don't think that things are working, they are.
Yeah.
So it means doing small things, like even if you're bringing paper plates and stuff to meetings, all of that makes a difference. Even if it seems like the information is boring, and we all have things that we're doing in our lives. We have families, we have responsibilities, and it's understandable that you cannot do everything at one time. And that's also another important thing to understand, is that we don't have a God complex. We are not going to be able to save everybody or do everything. So we do as little as we can with the time and our abilities that our abilities can allow. So and doing that consistently, like I said before, truly makes a difference.
Yeah.
And do what is passionate for you. My passion is community building. My passion really is about holding that safe space for people, so that when they do come to that liberation for themselves, they are able to focus on the things that are important to them. And that's really, really going to be important for many people, is that holding that community space for us really helps us to get out there and really start and really speak up. There is strength in numbers. There is strength in even if you don't feel like you can do things on the front end, you can certainly help on the back end. There are a number of things that you can do. You can find what works best for you. And also it's an opportunity to learn a new skill, learn how to do something, and learn how to volunteer or dedicate your time in different ways. And I think that is going to be extremely important there.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, I want to echo everything that you just said. I do think that so many of us, and I even see in the comments right now, a lot of us are really disillusioned when it comes to voting, because we do have this corrupt two-party system where, yes, both are totally in the pockets of corporations and are more interested in those and then in their constituents. However, voting does matter, particularly on a local level. And when you focus on the local level, your vote goes so much further because your voice is being made heard, and the only voices that matter are the ones in your community. And those are also the people that you can get a direct audience with. I want to reiterate, school board races are so important. I
Yes.
mean, I have stories about the school board race in North Carolina where I was at. It was a nightmare, and the nightmare won out. So now we have Christian nationalists, anti-LGBTQ, anti-CRT, racist school board members that are dictating the curriculum of your children. So now that I live up in Maryland, even though I live in a very progressive area, we still have a school board candidate who made national news for going to the library and checking out every single LGBTQ book so nobody else could read them. So please pay attention, especially when people aren't watching, because you're totally right. We all get concerned when it's in the news, but by then, sometimes it's too late.
Too late, yeah.
The other thing that I really want to reiterate is that, especially when we're facing a crisis like we are now with the overturning of Roe, it can be so tempting to jump out in the front and say, what can I do? And I feel like for a lot of people, particularly women that look like me, this is sort of like a manifestation of this white saviorship where you want to be like the Katniss Everdeen. You are the main character. You're like, come to my house if you need an abortion. And I'm just going to tell you, there are so many organizations in your community and so many leaders who have been doing this for a long time. And it might not be sexy. This is not your main character moment. Go and help the people that are already in your community. And then if there is a gap that is not already filled by somebody else, that's when you can step up. But yeah, it'll be bringing paper plates. It could be sending emails or making phone calls or just running errands. But it is not about us as individuals. It is about uniting all of us as a whole, because that's what the alt-right, that's what the Christian white supremacist movement, that's what the GOP has, is this unity. They are a well-oiled machine, which is why they win out even though they're a minority. So that's my soapbox.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. And I think it's important to find the groups that are doing these things, find the places you can, if you can't physically be at an abortion clinic, to be a clinic defender or those guys. Donate to places that are helping women get the care they need. I've said before, yes, go protest, carry a sign, yell and scream, exhibit your outrage, but don't just do that. Because after you do that, after your outrage is spent, after you put your sign back in the garage, work needs to be done. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that's an excellent point, Genevieve. To that, oh, that's great, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin is our New York City affiliate organizer.
Hey, come on!
Also the host of our show In the Cut, which is on our YouTube channel. What's
Thank
going
you.
on?
Shout out. He wants to be Will Judy when he grows up. We
Yeah.
all do, man.
It
We
was
all do.
amazing.
Mandisa, what, from your vantage point, we've got a few minutes left. What can people do on a practical level? Do you know of a good place to donate to help women, especially women of color, who are at risk when it comes to this Roe v. Wade overturning? The people most at risk who need help. Where can we put our energies and efforts and money even?
Yeah, so Tina Marshall, who we mentioned earlier, who's
Yeah.
great, she's in Charlotte. She is the founder of the Black Abortion Defense League.
Yep.
And they just did her and some other amazing women just did a panel with American Atheists earlier
Oh, that's
today.
right. Yeah.
And I think it was the Pink Defenders as well. And if you reach out to Tina on social media, she can definitely tell you, because she is definitely on boots on the ground with this work. She can definitely tell you the best places to, support, whether it's, the abortion funders and people who, the activists who are on the ground, who also need those resources. Definitely check out Black Abortion Defense League. I think they're on Twitter, as well as Facebook, and you can contact her there.
Okay, that's excellent. And we'll try to find the link to that organization and post it somewhere so that people can look and help there. Thank you, Wonder, she, her, $10 super sticker. Thank you for your support. Yeah, I wonder if your thoughts as we wrap up here, if this overreach by the court and the religious right and the white nationalists, when it comes to voting, I'm groping for a silver lining here. Do you think it might motivate more people to wake the fuck up and realize that we've been asleep at the wheel?
I certainly hope it does. I certainly hope that, regardless of whatever other differences we have, try to put them to the side and work through them. I wouldn't necessarily put them to the side, because they are important. It's important to hash those things out and discuss them and resolve them, but definitely focus on the main goal, to try to encourage more of us, if possible. I'm not a good politician.
Yeah.
I will
Me
say
neither.
that.
Me
I'm not a
neither.
good politician at all. But those who have, the wherewithal and the ability to, to run for office. There's also the Center for Free Thought Equality, which is a arm of the American Humanist Association. They vet, they also train candidates in secular, non-religious candidates. So there is another resource there. So it's really, really good to connect with your organizations, connect with your networks, because there's also resources in that too.
Yeah.
There are a lot of good national organizations to connect with, to find out more about what you can do to get involved, and not just do so when it's at a crisis point.
Yeah, that's the problem. We
yeah.
tend to be asleep at the wheel, while the Republican white nationalist machine, like Genevieve said, is a well-oiled machine. They've been working for this thing for 30 years, folks, and they're celebrating like they just won World War II. And we've been thinking, oh, that's not going to come to this. They said they wouldn't overturn it. They did that in the hearings, and we're not paying attention. We keep bringing a knife to a gunfight. And so, yeah, we have to be aggressive and on top of it before the crisis hits.
Sometimes that high road just doesn't work. Sometimes you got to get in there,
get down in the mud,
and get dirty.
Get down in the mud.
Indeed.
Thank you, Secularity. Put the link to the Facebook link to Black Abortion Defense League. Click on that. Tina is amazing. She is a warrior, and she's thank you so much. She's relentless. She doesn't get exhausted. I don't know how she does what she does, but I love her, and she's awesome. That's Mandisa. Before we go, where can folks find you? What do you have coming up next? I know you got the NanoCon.
Yes.
What's next on Mandisa's plate?
Well, so we are going into the summer, and speaking of conferences, I encourage everyone to check out and support and even attend the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference that is taking place in the fall. It takes place in Chicago and online from September 30th through October 2nd. You will hear from some wonderful women of color who are doing some amazing work in this movement, Tina and Cynthia included. We are trying to get Genevieve to get there in person. So some of the people who, of course, I will be there. Sakivu Hutchinson, if you are not familiar with her, you can find the link through BN's website, blacknonbelievers.org. You can also find WOCBeyondBelief.com. That is an amazing conference that is co-produced with the Black Skeptics Group and the Women's Leadership Project. We also still have our cruise convention coming up in November. We
I heard about that. I want
yes,
to
they
go.
are
I want to
amazing.
go.
It's amazing. So and we have all types of fun there. We have a bunch of wonderful presentations, and so if you are able to go this year, there's still time to register for it. Will is actually going to be one of our speakers.
I heard about that. Yeah.
So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you at NanoCon, and if you're going to be at the fall excursion for Recovering from Religion again. But I highly encourage everyone to check out the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference, and if it's something that you think you want to come to, please do come. Because you get a chance to see how we do conferences, especially at Black Non-Believers. And it's come one, come all. So if you want to attend and support the speakers and support the work that we do, there's a way to actually do that.
Well, and that all that information's on your website, and that's what, once again, that website is. It's in the chat.
BlackNonbelievers.org.
.org. Okay, good. And that's all in the chat, and we will have that in the show notes as well. Mandisa, it's been such a pleasure.
Yay.
You are such a force, and I just we could have talked about so many other things. I wanted to get to a lot of things, but I think these are the main points I wanted us to touch on tonight. And again, thank you so much for what you do. It's just so important.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And we will see you in a few weeks.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for coming. Oh, Genevieve, sorry.
I was going to say, Dave, did we mention that we are going to be off next week?
Oh gosh, we didn't. Genevieve, you are so good to keep me in line. So go ahead with that. Go ahead with that announcement.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Dave, you are going to be MIA, and it's July 4th, so we are going to be off next week. Not necessarily celebrating this nation right now, but it'll be a day off. So we'll see you the week after.
That is tough. Yeah, I thought about that, and it's 4th of July, and you're celebrating the independence of America, and we all know
the independence of some Americans and the
we all
others.
know that that's not what we like to think it is. It is hard for me to celebrate that. I'm going to be honest, but it's what we got. It's where we are. We're in this country. There are, if we're honest, worse places to live. This is not the best, nor is it the worst. There's a lot of work to be done. There are some good things about this country. But it's tough right now to celebrate the 4th of July for me personally.
And it's important to sit with that. It's important to sit with that information that you probably weren't taught.
No.
As a kid.
No.
When you grow old and you learn, you're like, oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Yeah. I'm embarrassed. I grew up in Arkansas, Southern state, and I was at a public high school. Shortly after that, I became a white evangelical Christian. We know what that means. So there's so much of the Black history that I had no idea of, completely ignorant. It was just shielded from me, and it's embarrassing. And so this country does not have a great beginning or history. So if you don't want to celebrate 4th of July, I hear you, man. Don't. Watch a movie and turn the lights off and just forget it.
There will be a protest at the Supreme Court as well if you come out wearing red, white, and blue. I forget if it's Planned Parenthood putting it on or Bands Up Our Bodies, but there will be that if you want to do that and you're in the DC area.
Well, but anyway, we'll miss you next week, folks. We're going to take the week off. If you're with your families and stuff, whatever you're doing, but enjoy yourself, stay safe. Mandisa, again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor to have you on.
Thank you
we're honored.
This was long overdue, Dave. Really
yes, it was. It really was. So, folks, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for your super chats and your support. Sorry about the phone lines. We'll be up next time, hopefully. But that's our show for tonight.
Bye.